Hey guys, welcome back to the House of Gouldians. I'm Clyde Delby. Season 1, we looked very much at the fundamentals, or the back to basics if you like, of Gouldian keeping. We went through the basic seed mixes, soft food, preventative care, all that kind of thing. And those methods give me very good longevity. So I've now got birds in my birdroom that are blue ring birds, which so next year they will be they would have gone through a full cycle, so they're going to be 7-8 years old type scenario. I've got a purple ring bird, and last year was a purple ring, so it was actually the purple rings before that. So you're talking a good 8-year-old bird there. And the point is, I'm getting the longevity. So the methods from season 1, they work. Season 2, however, we're going to be looking at a lot more detail. So season 2 is very much more sort of taking it to the next level. We're going to be doing things like comparing the South African standard to the international standard, so we can start picking up differences and the type of things that you need to look for when hearing what I'm talking about, and then compare that to your own area where you live and what the standard is there. So we're not just looking at the type anymore, which is focus of season 1 and how to identify a bird with a decent shape. We're now going to also be looking at things like the color markings of the bird, the color panels of the bird. We're going to be discussing how those colors are actually formed, so the structural sort of side of it, because what we see with the eye that we interpret as purple or whatever is actually made up of different things. So we're going to be looking at all that kind of more sort of next level type stuff, which really improves your understanding of your bird and how to sort of go about improving quality and that kind of thing. We're then going to be discussing or having breeder features with guys from all over the world. So we've got, we have already done the recording of the interview for a gentleman, Ahmed, and he's from Bahrain, and he's an international judge as well. So yeah, and a great ambassador for the hobby. So he's one of the interviews that we've already done. We've also spent a bit of time with Javier from the British Gouldian Finch Club, and we have other guys lining up from all over the world, so from Canada, from Russia, from Thailand, and it's going to be great to hear their different perspectives and how they go about keeping Gouldians based on their climate, their environment. So if you're from those parts of the world, it's going to be beneficial for you to hear sort of how they're going about it, opposed to just how I do things in South Africa. We're also going to be doing things like looking at diet. So in South Africa, we sort of have access to certain seeds, and we combine certain mixes based on our climate. Whereas if you're in a colder climate, your seed ratios and mixes might be a little bit different because you need maybe a higher fat content or whatever the case might be. So we're going to be going into a lot of that kind of detail this season as well. You can see we've put up the new cages and that. It's still the old birdroom. The new birdroom is still under construction. We have finished the flight and that for the new birdroom, so we will be doing a little bit of forming out there as well. But you can see already that you've got far better view of the birds. The birds are calmer as well because it's a perspex front, so they're not picking up quite as much vibration and that kind of thing. And I really think it's going to be a lot better for you as a viewer. I know there's a bit of reflection at the moment, and I'll just play around with the lighting a little bit more, but you should get a lot clearer view of the birds while I'm talking and that kind of thing, and we can point out a lot more detail. So yeah, I think it's going to be an awesome season 2. I would recommend that if you haven't subscribed already, you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out. Some of those education slots I'm not going to be doing. It's going to be guys from sort of international guys that are going to be discussing various aspects, comparing standards, all that kind of thing. So it should prove to be a really fascinating season. Let's get on with the rest of the show. So in terms of the majestic side of it, I thought we would have a bit of fun this season. So we're going to have a bit of a competition amongst it. We're going to take 2 pairs per bloodline, if you like, or segment of the bloodline, if you like. So remember season 1, we said that the red-headed purple breast would be named after British monarchs, and they will go in the cages with the stress perches with the British flag in the corner. The French One is the black-headed version, so the British is the red-head, French is black-head, and then finally we have the Spanish, which is the orange-headed Gouldians with purple breast, green back, because it's the classics. So when I say we're going to have a competition with them, the idea is we want to see two things. We want to see out of the 6 pairs, which of those 3 lines will give us the most offspring. So that's, they get 1 point per offspring. But then what we're going to do is, it doesn't help breeding quantity. I've never been about quantity. It's about quality. So we're going to use the skills that we're going to be using this or learning this season in terms of the scoring of your birds, and we're going to apply that point system to those birds, the chicks, at the end of the season, and we're then going to get the overall score per bloodline, if you like, so which is the overall score for the redheads, the blackheads and the orange heads. So yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It'll give us some other sort of aspects to look forward to, and that's the plan for the majestic bloodline. Right, so before season 1 even began, I was doing research in general on the internet, and I realized that there was a shortage of Gouldian information in one sort of central place. And just the Gouldian community in general seemed to be very underrepresented in terms of YouTube and information that was out there. And one of the guys that I came across was a gent by the name of Matt, and he's from the Canary Room. Quite honestly, he was the inspiration for this channel. So big shout out to Matt. And if you're a canary keeper as well as Gouldians and you haven't seen Matt's channel, I would really recommend that you take a look at it. Anyway, the point is that one of the things that Matt does, and this is all credit to him, is that he does a sort of checklist, if you like, or to-do list for the sort of canary room and what needs to happen that month. So I thought that would be a jolly good way to sort of sum up what we did cover in season 1, just as kind of a refresher. So we will, at the beginning of each month, the first episode of that month, will have our sort of to-do list. In October, what are we looking for? So first off, it's full seed. The birds are not on austerity as yet. They've finished the breeding season, so they're still busy sort of recuperating and that. They've also normally either in the middle of the molt or they're coming towards the end of molt by October. In South Africa, obviously, you've got to adjust according to where you are in the world. So they're on full seed at the moment. They're also getting soft food, but we've cut that way down. So instead of daily, because of chicks, obviously cages like this one that does have chicks in it are still getting soft food daily. But your chicks with cages without chicks, so in other words, the sort of flights and that kind of thing, they will only get soft food once a week. Maximum twice a week, depending on where they are in the molt. So I typically give soft food still if they're in the molt, as they need that extra sort of nutrition and that kind of thing to help them. But once the maltings come to an end, they'll only get soft food once a week. Very, very important this time of year is to help the birds recuperate the lost calcium from egg laying and that kind of thing. So all throughout the year, but particularly this time of year, all my birds have access to the grit mix. It's a combination of cuttlefish, eggshells, oyster grit, and then your iodine blocks as well. So they're getting access to that permanently. The other thing is that with it being a maintenance period, obviously parents like this that are still weaning chicks are still together, but other than that, I've split them into single sex flights. So all my hens are together, all my cocks are together, and all my uncolored juveniles are together that are maybe not 100% sure what they are yet. I don't move them immediately when I can identify them. I typically wait until they're basically through the molt, as it's quite a stressful time for them, and the less I interact and catch them and stress them out, the better. So that's kind of October's to-do list, is good nutrition. We're still giving calcium and all the rest of it, and we're still giving some soft food, but limited to depending on the scenario, and single sex flights. The other thing that's very important this time of year is the birds, because they've come out of breeding season, they're still very susceptible to disease. So your cleanliness is of utmost importance. This is my favorite time from the birdroom cleanliness perspective. The birdroom looks the best because I don't have to worry about disturbing parents on eggs and that kind of thing, so I can really deep clean. And this is the time for deep cleaning. So I'll typically strip the pigeonholes completely, take the cages out. Obviously the birds will be out of them. I'll scrub them down, spray them with disinfectant. I use a vet grade disinfectant, F10, and then I also can clean cages and pigeonholes itself. Like I said, I'm using F10. So it's very much about deep cleaning this time of year and making sure that everything is spick and span to keep your birds as healthy as possible. One of the things that we need to do, and you would have picked it up from the thumbnail for today's show, is we need to test breed the birds. Now, what do we mean by that? So the downside of recessive mutations like blue, like this chap behind me, or white breast or lilac breast, is that the bird can be carriers for it but non-visual for it. So this particular chap, with him being blue, his chicks have come out normal and dilute because he's a pastel, so he's also carrying yellow. But he was bred to a normal looking hen. We happen to know that she's a carrier for blue, but the point is the chicks look normal. So if I didn't know the history of those birds and I had to breed with them, I would be breeding the blue mutation into my purebred line if I was using them for that. So we want to try and make sure that that hasn't happened, and that's what we talk about when it comes to test breeding. So one of the pairings I did in season 1, you will recall I put one of our purple-breasted orange heads that we had bred the previous year that formed part of the Majestic, and I paired him up to a really nice white-breasted, orange-headed hen. Now, the idea wasn't to produce birds to use in the Majestic, but to rather add quality to the white-breasted line, but at the same time we're doing what we're talking about now, which is test breeding for white breast. So that hen is a visual white breast, which means she got a copy from her father and mother, and that's why she's now a visual white. He may be carrying the white gene and we don't know about it, which means that whole orange-headed purple breast line that we're working with our pure, we would then have a problem with. So I needed to make sure that they're not split for white breast. So I took him, I paired her up with her, and so far the youngsters that are slowly starting to color up don't appear to be showing any signs of white feathers in the chest or breast area, and therefore I'm pretty sure they're going to turn out to be purple-breasted birds. 2 of them are colouring up as hens, but I'm waiting for the third one to colour up just to make sure. And I'm hoping that would be a cockbird, but it doesn't matter either way. So the point is, we test bred to a recessive mutation to see if any of the youngsters would be visuals, and then we know that the purebred line is carrying that. Now, why do I say it's applicable to more than just trying to establish a pure line? So let's say you have a Gouldian that pops out with a brand new mutation. I don't know, let's say it pops out with a green rump or a purple rump or something different. So you then want to find out what could be adding to that new mutation. Is it only prevalent in birds that perhaps are white breast carriers? So in other words, you need the white breast aspect to, with whatever the new mutations genes are or whatever, in combination to get a visual on that. You don't know if that's the case if you don't know what the genes are behind the birds that you have in that project. So you have to test breed for anything recessive. So you need to test for blue. In this case, white breast we tested for, but lilac breast would also be quite important. The other ones, if you're not in South Africa, if you're in other parts of the world, you guys have things like Latino, albino, you have cinnamon, you have sea green, and each one of those are recessive in the cockbirds, although they're a sex-linked mutation for most of those that I was referring to. But the point is that hidden recessive gene may be having some kind of effect on your new mutation. So don't think that test breeding is only if you're trying to establish a line of pure classic birds or wild type birds. It's not the case. It is something that I recommend that you do on a fairly regular basis so that you fully understand what's happening in your bird room. So yeah, so that's the theory behind test breeding and why it's important. While we're at it, something to understand is that I often hear the guys say, oh no, it's a split for a particular mutation, in this case blue. It's only 100% split if it was a visual paired with a non-visual, for example. If it is two non-visual birds and you pair them together and they happen to give you a blue or happen to give you a white breast or a lilac or whatever, the other offspring or their offspring would all be, except for the visual ones obviously, would be possible splits. And it's important to understand the difference, because if you're selling a bird, you don't want to say to someone it's a guaranteed split because it's one sibling with a white breast. No. It's a possible split because it could have got a copy of the gene from one of the parents, but it's not 100% guaranteed. Theoretically, 25% of the chicks from a split to split would be non-carriers for that mutation. 50% of them, statistically, should be carriers, and 25% of them, if it was a split to a split, would then end up being visuals. But remember, when we're talking statistics like that, and it's those Punnett squares and that you hear the guys talk about, those percentages is if you statistically had a nice big group. So let's say you could breed 100 chicks from one pair, then those numbers would work out. It's actually a roll of the dice per egg. So in other words, if there's a 50% chance that the bird would be split, that's on each egg. That egg has a 50-50 chance. Each egg has a 25% chance of being visual. Each egg has a 25% chance of being pure normal. So that is why when it comes to genetics, you need to be very careful how you word it when you're selling the bird, because that's where I think a lot of breeders get themselves into trouble. They sell a bird as a guaranteed split for blue or a split for blue because they've had one chick come out as a blue baby, and then the purchaser of that bird buys it, heard that it's split, and now breeds it back to a blue and nothing comes out blue, and now they're fighting with that breeder because the breeders told them the wrong thing. If it comes from a split to split, it's a possible split, even if one of the other siblings are visual. It is only a guaranteed split is if one of the parents is visual for that recessive mutation, like this blue bird behind me. All the chicks I can sell with confidence saying they are split for blue. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. I hope I haven't caused any confusion. If you've got any questions, you're welcome to pop that down in the comments below the video. In 2 weeks' time though, it is going to be a breeder feature, and it's going to be a long one. So the episode will be about an hour long. It's the interview with Ahmed, and him and I chat about all sorts of different things. And yeah, it was really a fascinating conversation that we had. So I hope you're looking forward to that.